Hello, welcome back to the Autistic Tidbits and Tangents podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kara Dymond. I am an autistic university lecturer, teacher, author, like trying to think of all the things, person who lives in Ontario, Canada.
And I am Maja Toudal. I am an autistic psychologist, also author, stuff. I'm just here. Hi, I'm from Denmark.
Hello everybody. My name is Bruce Petherick. I am very much a musician since I did a very successful concert last night. Also, day job is autistic advocate for Autism Canada. And I'm finding it amusing that these two wonderfully talented, gifted women that I am speaking to are so modest about their achievements and what they are.
My brain goes blank when I have to introduce myself, always. It's the thing I dread most of the time. You know, if I'm in a meeting and I have to introduce myself, if someone else has me on their podcast and I have to say something about myself, it's like,
I have to remind myself in my presentations, it's actually part of my template, introduce yourself. Because I'll just like, this is the topic, let's go, because this is fascinating. It's like, oh, I forgot who I am.
Yeah, I usually have to put in a slide where I'm like, and who am I? And why am I even here talking about this thing?
Because otherwise, like, maybe that's an autistic thing. We like to go deep. We don't like to waste time on the things that feel kind of superficial.
Maybe. But also, like, I've learned to really acknowledge that to neurotypicals and also to some autistics, some neurodivergents, it's really important to know, why should I be listening to this person?
True.
Why do they have any sort of credentials that I should be paying attention to? I don't know. And the thing is, I don't necessarily feel that I do have any credentials.
I think that's the thing. So
I'm just here.
I enjoy listening to other people's introductions. You know, if I'm at a conference, whatever it is, I always want to know about the person, but I just hate doing that part myself.
Yeah.
Welcome to Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.
Candid conversations between autistic off-hour professionals.
With lots of tangents in different accents.
Cool. Trigger warnings for this episode include discussions of communication differences based on various factors, humor, including sexual humor, historical pathologization and institutionalization of autistic folks, mentions of political events and figures, including cruelty to animals, and some swears.
I find and we just discussed that we wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. I just wonder how related this is.
Very.
I don't care what the credentials are. Honestly, it's like, maybe I want to just trust what I'm listening to from a blank slate, with a trust that this person is saying something.
And no, I want them to tell me if they have cats and dogs. You know, like, I'm more interested in like the little personal details about them, and I find that engaging.
And actually, quite honestly, sometimes the introduction turns me off.
Interesting.
Because I have a bias against non-autistic researchers talking about autism. Like, instantly that's going to go up. I'm going to bring up I'm going to be really, really, really super careful about how much judgment you're making here.
Bruce, you're going to love next year's Autism Europe Congress.
Because everybody's autistic.
Pretty much.
Yes, and it's up on the website, actually,
Is it?
Who all of the speakers are.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God, I didn't know it was public yet.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to get my information in. Really, I promise I'll do that today. I promise.
Good. I want to bring you there.
Well,
I need to hear your music in person.
So perhaps we can say it. Maja and I are both going to be speakers at that conference, keynote speakers.
Yes.
And we're hoping to have Bruce come out as well. And that would be amazing to actually all meet in person, because I've only met Bruce in person.
Yeah, really, really amazing. But also the Autism Europe Congress. It's so it happens every 3 years, and it moves around Europe to different countries each time. The last time I went, it was in Edinburgh, that was not the prior one. That was the time before, I think. So I've been to the one in Edinburgh, and then next year it's going to be in Dublin. And this time, the Irish charity As I Am Ireland, which is an autistic created and led organization, is hosting the Autism Europe Congress. And they are the most awesome people I think I've ever met organization-wise in the autism world. I love As I Am Ireland. A part of me wants to move to Ireland just to work with them. What they do is super inspiring. But what they did is they actually made sure that this time there was an autistic, a much larger autistic representation on the honorary scientific committee, which means the committee that chooses the content for the Congress. So for the first time ever, there were more autistic people than non-autistic people on that committee. And that is all because of As I Am Ireland. And I love them. Okay, I did that now. We're supposed to be recording an episode, guys.
We are recording an episode.
Like 7 tangents.
No. So I need to put an advocate's hat on just for a second. And in the acknowledging what you've just said as a celebration, and then acknowledging that's a pretty low bar.
It's a pretty low bar, but for a research congress, it's a really important step.
Yep. There's conflict here.
Yeah. But like even though we feel like we should have been taking this step 20 years ago, the fact that it's now happening, and it's happening because autistic organizations are getting involved at the top level of organizing, a European conference.
Major conference.
Yeah. At least in European terms. I mean, we don't really do the huge conferences that they do in America. I don't think it's, I don't know. So this conference is usually like 3,000 people ish. But it's a research conference. It's usually almost reserved for researchers presenting their research to other researchers. And the fact that it's now leaning towards not just including autistic voices, but actually putting them at the forefront. And also this time putting the practical impact of research at the forefront. We are asking speakers this time to make it clear in which way their presentation impacts practical life. Like, what can you do? What changes can you make based on this? So, I don't know. I love it. I love that this is the direction we're going in. And I hope that it inspires a whole bunch of national conferences to go in that same direction.
Can we put in the introduction like earlier?
Yeah, I probably can.
And if not, let's do a little dance now.
Okay. The finger dancing. All right.
I'm on that point about the national. Like, I am proud that the organization for which I 9 to 5 work, 9 to 3, 9 to every 24 hours. We've run a conference for autistics by autistics for many years. I think this year we actually have a few more non-autistic people speaking, but there's a really heavy connection. Previously, it literally has been only autistic people, or last year we had sisters who are writing a guide for hospitals, and one was autistic and one was not. It's like, okay, that's completely fine. But yes, back to the size of the conferences, and again, coming from the academic discipline that I come from, certainly when I was a student, if there was 3,000 musicologists in the entire world, that'd be a surprise to me. And so I'm more used to conferences of the couple of hundred.
Yeah.
Which, you actually get to hear almost everybody. You can meet everybody, as scary as that is. And I have been, I've been involved in a presentation for MLA 20-something years ago. And that was like, I think there was 6,000 presenters or 5,000. It's just like I'm going from this like 150 people to this place that's having, I think the MLA was at one stage the largest academic conference. It probably still is. And you'd have 10 parallel sessions. And it was kind of interesting how that silos people, because this paper was about medievalism, and it went into the early modern medieval track. And you'd have the same 200 people attending all that. And yet there's another like 9,500 people doing other things, not interacting. I think 3,000 it sounds to me like a good size. It sounds to me that you can pick and choose, because you always get tired. But you've almost got the chance to see everybody, but anyway, I think it's a good number.
I hope so. The last time I went, it was a really good conference. And I'm really hoping this will be too. I think it will be.
And hurrah to more autistic voices in research, and putting us at the forefront. And Now, Bruce, you had the idea for today's topic. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Certainly. So this, showing nerd credentials here for a second, there's an online game I've been playing the last couple of months, and this is a thing you do daily. I call them making your numbers get bigger. It's I think it's Zombie Wars or something, and you click buttons and numbers get bigger, and that's satisfying for me. That's okay. So within the chat, and I don't like partaking in chat for a whole bunch of reasons, which I'm probably going to get close to articulating now. But quite often, the other players in my little alliance group would just send messages with emojis. And I can't decode them. I mean, obviously, there are some smiley face or whatever. Okay, that's a kind of a simple one. But sometimes they'd be combining emojis, and I just get lost. I can't understand the first thing in the thread, and so every subsequent message just becomes confusing. And I call it noise. And I was, funnily enough, sort of discussing it with Maja. It was midnight at the airport. I was picking my wife up. For some reason, I think I just posted to our little group chat just because I was like, this is a thought I had. But it was amusing that for me to be having a conversation, Maja, with you at midnight. Of course, Kara, you were very asleep at this stage.
Hopefully.
We hope. So this is triggered this idea for me that I find so much social media conversations noisy. There's a lot of extraneous information, or when people try to be succinct, they often use emojis that I don't get, I don't understand. So this discussion comes in, what do we think about the use of emojis? How effective are they for us as autistic people? Comments like that.
Mm-hmm. So as you were talking, it's interesting because I will use some emojis. I think the ones that I use primarily would be sort of smiley face, laughing, heart. Very clear ones. And I appreciate emojis if they're about like clarifying tone. But if it was a whole string, like you mentioned, I would have no idea what they meant. Potentially. And then there are so many emojis, I actually don't know when I see it what it means. So like my awareness of emojis is limited to a select few.
I think there are certainly emojis that can be useful, as you said, Kara, with like clarifying tone. But that also gets complicated really quickly because there are certain emojis that for our generation clarify tone in a positive way, but that to someone 20 years younger is immediately interpreted as sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's something to be said for acknowledging the complexity of communicating with emojis and GIFs for that matter, because not only do you have to have the context of the conversation, and if someone starts off a conversation with just a string of emojis, there's no context for you to build on.
And that's not a conversation.
No, but to some people it is. Because they know what that particular string of emojis means. But to a lot of others, for example, our generation, which, we grew up with text messaging and emails. We certainly don't have a problem with text-based communication. But the way that we began using emojis, we typed them out. They weren't little images.
That's true. It was like semicolon. Yeah.
Exactly.
And bracket.
I think emojis have changed in how they are used from generation to generation. And just saying this out loud makes me feel really old.
I'm sure a lot of what we do is cringe to younger people.
Okay, I was at a 60th birthday party last night, and there was an Elvis impersonator, and just the name Elvis was mentioned, and this like 5-year-old kid goes, "Who's Elvis?"
Oh, no.
And the entire room is just, oh shit, cringe.
Yeah, but hang on. I am that age you just mentioned. Elvis died when I was 13.
Yeah.
Like for me, and I have 20 years on you guys, Elvis is like this old previous generation. Why? I don't understand why a 5-year-old would have a clue.
Not even, I don't know, just not knowing the music history would be, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. There are adults that don't remember 9/11.
Yeah.
And it's weird to me. Like, it's just weird. I'm old now. And
like a Bruce laugh.
No, but the experience of the communication gap is no longer just I'm autistic, so I don't understand the other kids. It's now I'm autistic, so I don't understand my peers, but I also don't understand the people that are older than me, and I don't understand the people that are younger than me, because we're all communicating all differently. Add to that internet, which now means we're communicating across countries, which means we're communicating across cultures and nationalities and exposure to history, everything is hard.
And look, to be honest, I'm not disagreeing. I'm finding this amusing just because you're articulating things that I've felt sometimes, and then also, but also thinking about how it's not that serious. This is not particularly autistic related, though, is it?
No, these are sort of general communication differences that can,
of course,
develop across age, culture. Yeah. Autism is another layer.
And I think that's the important thing to emphasize here. I think this is the problem I have, is that decoding social communication is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And having grown up, like I am exactly of the right age. Like I had an internet account in 1991, and you're at the exactly start of what the internet was before, once it got out of the Defense Department. I've been extraordinarily comfortable that language, that medium, and I think I get distressed when this is something that I should know. I find difficult now because the coding has changed. Actually, this is interesting. I think, Maja, you've just raised an interesting point. It's almost as if I've now moved to another country where I now have to learn all the gestures and all the facial expressions. I have to learn them all again. And so at the moment, it's just noise.
Now, I think we've talked about this a little bit before. You're not a big fan of like GIFs, whereas I love them. I find it so much easier to express my complex emotions by finding a picture, particularly a little animated picture that moves around, than putting it into words. And I'd be very curious from our listeners, like if that's something that is relatable, if that's something that's harder for people. But Bruce, you have a different opinion. So what's that like for you?
Remind me what my opinion is.
You had said that you basically said you had a dislike of emojis and GIFs in communication.
But I think Bruce also said that in relation to these gamer chats.
Okay. Which
I think is somewhat relatable. So I'm on Discord with players of the games that I used to play. Now I have a toddler, so I don't play anything. And my husband likewise. And obviously I don't read his chats, but sometimes I'll go to
see them in conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I've seen briefly sometimes his chats on Discord, and I'm so confused. And it's, they're using GIFs and emojis, GIFs especially. And it is very often what I will see is humor presented through GIFs that are sexual or violent or both. Mm-hmm. And it's so over the top that it's being presented as humor. And I have seen a tendency in the games that I play as well, that people in chats will have particular forms of humor that are, shall we say, crass.
That is not what I was thinking of. Okay, interesting.
And Maja and I have already actually, we've sort of in our conversation sort of talked about this, and like to emphasize, I have the thing open just here just because it was running. Like right now, they're talking about rebuilding their trucks, and then certain things about what they would want to do with their female companions in the trucks. And it's just look, there's a certain reality of that sexual innuendo, or even past the sexual innuendo being part of discourse.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you've said it's gone, and gone over the limit, and I think that's what I'm seeing. It's like it's not. Yeah. We're not in that grey area, and I don't think this is kind of an innuendo and kind of not. It's just gone.
No, they take it so far because they don't. I think there isn't that. So in real life, of course, there are going to be groups of people where this sort of humor still runs to the extremes.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I think in real life, there will be one or two people that kind of reel it back, like a checks and balance on how do we communicate here. But when you're doing it through text and GIFs and emojis, you become a little bit more detached from the conversation, and things that used to not be funny, you're now like, well, I guess this is the funny thing, so I'm going to run with it. Or maybe it does become funny. I don't know. But I think there's a layer to it as well. That's if we bring in autism again, what I see is that very often autistic people will be completely non-understanding towards where this humor came from. Like it's alien to us. What is funny about this thing? Because our humor tends to come from, I don't know, other places. We tend to enjoy puns and
wordplay, wit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clever comedy.
Historical references that put something in relief and put a funny spin on something that's happening now. It's our humor just tends to come from different places, and I think it's because our focus on bodies and sexuality isn't quite so all-encompassing. I don't know, but that's what I tend to see. And then I also have to acknowledge the other extreme, because autism, we do tend to be in extremes. And so there are definitely autistic people that find that humor, find out that other people respond to it very well, and become experts in it.
Actually, I was going to interject, but this now becomes an adjunct.
What have I done?
No. I think this isn't. You clarified something for me, or at least allowed me to clarify something within myself. I've seen especially the last sort of 10 years, a big rise in autistic comedians. And there's been a couple of, I've done performances with autistic comedians. And what's funny is a lot of them are just doing stand-up in that really traditional stand-up way. And I see nothing autistic about them. And then, like, the person I love at the moment so much, Hannah Gadsby, like, her humor is so autistic. And I think you've just articulated that. There is that, I mean, for her, obviously, it's just brutal honesty.
Yeah.
She's sharing our experience, but in a like, she's such a good comedian. She knows the craft. She knows how to write. She's got the pace. It's fantastic. But it's so relatable for me. But I think non-autistic people also find it funny. But then I go and see, stand-ups that could have been from the Catskills 100 years ago, and it's just like, I what?
Well,
You know what?
this is an interesting tangent because I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, what is funny? My favorite types of comedians are the autistic truth tellers. Not necessarily autistic, but the truth tellers, the philosophers who are really calling out the absurdity of the world. I love ranters. I love like George Carlin, Lewis Black, Bill Hicks. And they're all just like pointing out terrible things about the world, usually. And they are telling the truth, and people are laughing, which also makes me think about, the court jester figure, who's the only person who can speak truth to power. Like, perhaps we have always been comedians. Just, there have always been neurodivergent people in this role.
Out about the examples that you just mentioned. George Carlin, famously, very crass humor, but delivered in such a way that it's not perverse somehow.
Can you define crass in that? Sorry, can you define crass in that way?
I find that some of the comedy of his that I've seen is very focused on bodily functions.
As punchlines very often, or as a parallel thing to make a point. Okay.
But he skirts that line very well, or walks that line very well. I can't language today. I'm sorry.
Bo Burnham, another person.
Yes. Can I mention, because I've been thinking for a very long time that this person is autistic, but I don't know if they've ever said it in those words. I recently saw an interview, and it's probably a few years old, but I recently saw an interview with Tim Minchin, where he mentioned that he has a neurotype that makes him...
Tim
Minchin.
Composer of Matilda and... Yeah.
Cool.
I think he's autistic.
I think he's out.
You think he's out? Okay.
I think so.
I wasn't sure. Because so I've been a fan of his for a bunch of years. A very long time, actually. And I've always kind of thought, why do I relate to his comedy so much? And then he started donating the proceeds from his Christmas single, White Wine in the Sun.
His daughter's definitely autistic, apparently.
Yeah, okay. But I don't know if he is...
I'm Googling.
Okay. So he donates the proceeds from that single every December to the National Autistic Society in Australia, it must be, or in the UK. I don't know. He's lived both places. He's from Perth, but he's lived a bunch of years in London, I believe. But I find him, like, some of his humor is so, like, you really have to be in the mood for it. Because it's, some of his song lyrics are harsh. But for some reason, he hits something so truthful in all of it that it just is super funny to me. It always has been. And so I don't think it's that we can't do sexual humor or bodily humor or anything like that. I think we need it to have context. We need it to have a context and a build-up and an actual joke in there.
It's like that surprise twist.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give an example that's been, I know for certain, running on World of Warcraft for years and years and years and years. This is a very, very old game by now. I've played it since launch. I've been in all of those chat rooms. I ended up actually leaving general chat and trade chat altogether on all of my characters because there's a certain joke that keeps popping up, and it's just not funny to me. I'm going to say it, and I apologize to any listeners that feel like this is very crass language. So what people will do is they will say, like, they will type anal and then link a name of an item in the game. So whatever that might be, but like there items like armor or weapons or mounts or whatever all have different names. So for example, there's a shield called the immovable object, and there's a hammer called the unstoppable force, right? So everything has different names, but people will say anal and then something or an ability. It could be an
What does
ability.
it mean? I don't get that.
Anal this, anal that, anal, like, and it just keeps going for sometimes for hours. And the thing about it, like, I know that these people have fun finding those names and finding those links and finding their own contribution to the conversation. But to me, it's like,
I'm so confused.
You need a little bit more than that.
What are they suggesting? I don't even want to say what I think they're suggesting.
No, but they're not suggesting anything. They're just saying...
Using the word in like without... It's like there's a rhetorical device where you add a word to something that actually is not part. It's like an emphasizer. So in Australia, you often say "apps are bloody useful," and the bloody is actually it's an emphasizer, but actually semantically makes no difference. So this is what it's a very weird rhetorical device, by the way, Kara, if you're looking it up.
No, I wasn't. I was still looking at Tim Minchin. I'm not going to look that up because if I search anal, what am I going to get? Like,
definitely don't.
I don't want that in my search history.
So we've rolled around here again back to my original. Sorry, Maya, had you finished?
No.
Okay. No, you hadn't finished. So we're getting back to here. The noise of the conversation, the conversation that's happening that we don't have a context for, and it, very much like Kara and I, as you were describing, I could see in our faces, and yes, we can read facial expressions, like this total what. What's it mean? Why? And we wanted a reason. I could see,
I still do.
I guessed at the end that there wasn't one. We just like, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. And this again is the thing. I think the thing that I was getting to originally was in these conversations when they start doing this, and for me, it's the emojis may start it. It's just like I don't understand, and therefore I cannot participate.
And not only that, like. For me, I feel like I'm going to be wondering about this throughout the rest of this conversation, that I might miss things happening later on in our talk because my brain is still going on like, what on earth was that about? Like, what does that mean? I'm seeking the meaning. And it makes me think, I had a student once, and I remember her telling me that whenever she was at school and someone, whether it was a teacher or peers, they used figurative language that she could recognize was figurative language, but she didn't always know what it meant. She would try and remember that all day to go home, look it up at home, to then understand what was being talked about. And again, like imagine the labor, the working memory load that requires for her to try to keep those expressions in mind, to look up later, that you've missed the what happens next in the conversation. You really are on the outside, and it's inaccessible. It's hard to get into the conversation if you don't know what the joke is.
So, Maya, do you know what's happening with eating cats at the moment?
Is it the orange guy again?
Yeah. Okay. So good. And people listening to this podcast in the future, hopefully you'll have no idea what we're talking about, and that's a good thing. So at the moment, there are just millions of memes about eating cats. Now, number one,
not funny.
It's racist. Like, it derives from a racist ideology.
It derives from a racist comment by an ignorant person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With no basis in fact.
No, none.
But the important thing here, the point I was going to make in the direction I was going, this is very specifically American. Yet there's now this assumption that everybody's supposed to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So not only it's there's all this conflict. Like if you hadn't seen the debate, or maybe you've been camping for a week, you got to wake up this morning, open your Instagram or Facebook or something, and go like, "What is going on?"
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this. Yeah.
No, but I feel that way about American politics all the time, though.
And so you should, because there is marginal amount of stuff that you should be affected by. And even as a Canadian, I think the only reason I'm interested in American politics is because of my friends that talking about coming and living with us because crossing the border again. So this is context that's temporal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any year.
Yeah, those jokes.
Those jokes are not going to make any sense. References to 9/11 is interesting because I argue, like when I was teaching at university about 15 years ago and talking about how 9/11 is going to fade in the memory.
Yeah. Because
it's an event. It's a historical event. Like for me, it's the landing on the moon. I actually won't ever forget that because it's possibly one of the strongest, earliest memories I have.
Mm-hmm.
I was in grade 1. We were watching it at school. I went home and I actually saw that's a really important date for me. But I recognize that for you two, landing on the moon is this historical event. The context is historical.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this modern communication is predicated on knowing a certain event and is very culturally specific. And we get hit by the hegemony of the United States being dominant, and everyone's expecting us to understand.
First of all, but I would add time zones to that for me, and for probably the rest of the world. So you guys are 6 hours behind compared to...
I'm 6 hours. He's 9 hours behind you.
Yeah, he's 9 hours.
Or 14 hours in front.
Or 14 hours.
So here's the issue. When something happens in American politics, I wake up the next day to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
So by then, the jokes are already
started.
6+ hours, usually 7+ hours, faded. Like the newsworthiness of something is already dying down.
Mm-hmm.
Usually what happens is that something that happens in American politics, which, let me just be really honest, it is important to the rest of the world because it is such a powerful nation and it impacts globally when that country, with everything that we talked about today, I'm going to say the word, when that country fucks up,
it affects everybody.
We all get hit. So it is important, but also the rest of the world, time zone wise, has to continuously be like, oh, you did that several hours ago and now we're hearing about it because we just woke up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's morning now.
Mm-hmm.
And the time frame in which we are all awake at the same time is so short. so short. And so for some of these events, sure, they have they start a conversation that goes on for days or weeks. But for some of it, it's also we don't even get to be a part of the conversation while it's new, because you guys are already done with that by the time we wake up.
Interesting.
And that's a weird feeling.
I definitely, like, coming from Australia, it was a step worse because, like, pre-internet. Actually, funnily enough, pre-internet, we often found out the news about the same time as everybody else because newspapers.
Yeah.
And we would have morning newspapers, and often it was evening newspapers, and sort of happened at the same time. But it's something I lived with all my life before I moved here, that time difference. But even because I'm on the West Coast, the same thing can happen when something happens in Toronto or in New York. It often can happen when we're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And getting that sort of...
How many time zones? Is it 6 time zones that Canada spans over? It's crazy. I
think it's 5, but one of them's weird.
Okay, right, yeah.
Like, is it Newfoundland and Labrador? Like, have a half an hour time difference?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Most of Europe is 3 time zones.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, we are all awake and doing things at the same time in Europe. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it just adds an element to any discussion and to the humor that goes along with it. Because, like, something can be funny while it's happening, but when the news gets to you the next day, or even say 3 hours later, it might not be funny anymore. And so I think there's that element too. Sorry, I just...
No, it's a good point, because you're emphasizing where I was going with this, and is that for us as autistics to participate in this conversation, we had to actively work much more in picking the context up. And we have to do that, we have to look at the context. Peter Vermeulen's theories about, we lack context in almost everything we do, which, I have a lot of sympathy for. And so we're working actively. And this is not something that just permeates. This is something you have to actually actively think about. The eating the cats one, I think there are a lot of people, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm really interested in politics. So that's an active thing. But there's also another mainstream going at the moment that happened because something happened in a football game, an American football game. And it's like,
or with celebrities, and I don't keep up on that. And actually, we were just talking, and it was making me think about when I was in high school. So many of my friends loved The Simpsons, South Park, Family Guy, and I wasn't allowed to watch any of those shows. So people would be making all of these references, and sometimes I would learn the reference because I'd hear it over and over. But again, I don't have part of that context. It's very hard for me to make a joke back and, bond from solidarity, bond from shared understanding. I can tell it's a joke. I don't always know what it's from. And humor.
That goes further into real life, I think. Like, even if we ignore the internet, even if we ignore television, for autistics, not being a part of the events in which things happen, in which those jokes arise. I remember going to school, and the other kids in the class would be laughing about something, and it would be something that happened at a party that I wasn't invited to.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. I'm never going to pick up on that context. I'm never going to be a part of that joke. I haven't shared that mutual experience with those people, and therefore I cannot participate in that humor. It's not that, you know, I remember after being diagnosed and hearing that myth constantly that autistic people don't have humor. Like, and here's the thing. I think I have great humor.
You do.
When
We
I
laugh all
have
the time.
context.
Yeah.
Oh, we laugh. We have a blast.
Yeah.
But it's not that we don't have humor. It's that if we don't share the context with the people that make the joke, then we don't understand the joke. And it's very hard to tell a joke that is actually funny without any context. Because it's, to us at least, because it's the context that makes it funny.
My brother Danny is the wittiest person I know, and he makes puns constantly. He'll be having a conversation. It'll just be this amazing zinger. He's autistic. He has an intellectual disability as well, but his humor is so sharp and so fast. And like that is such a myth about us not having humor. That's all I wanted to say.
No, but it's just so true, because I think it's just that other people don't necessarily, just like we don't share their context, they don't share ours. And that makes for a lot of miscommunication, not just in humor, but in many aspects of communication.
Absolutely.
Do either of you know the history of where the lack of humor has come from? This is actually something I don't know. I'm hoping.
No, not specifically, though I would imagine, again, it's the idea that what is humor to some people, right?
But I think it's also to do with,
if we're not laughing at the jokes, they think we don't have the humor.
Yeah, but also, let's be honest, the time during which most myths about autistic people arose was a time when the people who were being diagnosed with autism were treated in a way that would not be conducive to humor.
Correct. Good point.
And
yeah.
that is,
if I was living in a clinical setting, ripped away from any sense of safety, I would probably not be making many jokes. True.
Tortured.
Yeah.
I mean,
and look, and there's a certain truth about. Okay, let's just assume the statement "we don't have humor" is true for a second. It's not, but let's assume. Why would that be perceived? Okay, you've given a really big reality check about the institutionalization and the pathologization. Okay, valid. Now let's think about the last 20 or 30 years. I think one of the other problems is that we don't externally reflect the same way as neurotypical people do. And quite honestly, I think I'm funny. No, I don't think I'm funny. People find me funny in a good way, in a positive way. I love certain comedy. I tend to, like, if I'm watching a movie, I'd rather watch a comedy than almost anything else. I enjoy that. But I don't laugh that much. I don't show externally as much as other people. My dear wife I've seen her roll on the floor laughing, literally.
Yeah.
She expresses, she's ADHD, but I'm wondering if it's also the fact that we don't express externally, and then
for some people, yeah, it will be, but I think it's odd that the myth survives, considering how many people, how diverse autism obviously is.
May I interject for a moment? Because
Yeah.
Bruce, when you were speaking, it made me think, like, if I watch a movie or TV show, I don't laugh as visibly or as audibly as I would if, like, we were just having a conversation. And part of that for me is auditory processing. I don't want to miss the next part. I really control my reactions. And I don't like the interruption. I don't like talking during shows. I would pause if I could. I don't like the interruption, the awareness of other people. So to me, watching something is a little bit less social with someone else. Whereas if I'm having a conversation with you and you say something hilarious, I'm going to laugh very loudly and disrupt the flow quite a bit. So yeah, I wonder if that's a difference too.
I think, though, that with entertainment on screens, like I will pause it if I laugh to such an extent that I will miss something important, or I will realize that I've now been laughing for an extended period of time and I've missed something and I'm going to rewind. And several times that happens throughout comedy shows. Like, my husband will have to pause. I'm going to I've definitely recommended this show to you guys before, but on Netflix there's a show called Pardon My Icelandic by a comedian named Ari Eldjern, and it is definitely going to be more funny to Scandinavians and Icelandics. Like, it's definitely culturally, there's something there that is just hilarious if you're from here. Because there's so much play with humor and accents and that sort of thing. But that is such an autistic form of humor, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
pointing out social and cultural differences between a somewhat homogenous group, actually, from an external perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That truth-telling aspect of comedy, I love it.
Exactly. And so there were several times throughout that show that I was literally crying from laughter, and I couldn't breathe, and my husband had to pause the show and rewind because it was too much.
Yeah.
Referencing, I know that I've told you guys about our mountain in Denmark, which is not a mountain, it's a hill. Yeah. And Ari makes a joke about, rolling down this mountain, calling for help. And the way he does it is comedy gold.
Yeah. Because
it's not a mountain, it's a hill.
And everybody from Canada's going,
yeah.
You don't have time to. You're dead. Like the mountain. You're just falling down the
from
ravines.
Ontario.
No, it's a hill, you guys.
Yeah, we have mountains we call hills in Ontario.
Yeah.
Or sorry, hills we call mountains. Sorry.
Honestly, Danes are so sarcastic that I would not put it past our ancestors to have named it the Heaven Mountain. Sarcastically, because it's a freaking hill. I wouldn't put it past our ancestors to have done that, because that could have actually been a thing.
There's a hill, I think it's in Wales, that's called something in Welsh, and it means hill, or hill. It's like 4 or 5, and it's because each group of people they've named it this hill, and the next one says, "Oh yes, we call this a hill, and it's going to be the hill." Thinking about something else. I have to emphasize, reinforce something. I am happily my wife's pauser when it comes to movies, and so what I'll do is that I'll listen to her laugh, and then if I think she's missed something important, I'll make her rewind. But if it's not, it'll go on.
Yeah.
Just, I don't want to interrupt her good feeling. Like,
but I think it's also so. Definitely, there are many autistics that don't have the external expression, as you say, and definitely. So my husband is not. He's not autistic enough for a diagnosis. He's autism curious. He's got some serious traits, but he's not enough for a diagnosis, right? But he's definitely more that he lacks external expression of emotions, and he can come off as unemotional, even uncaring if you don't know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we've had discussions about us and humor because we find many of the same things funny. We have very, very similar humor, but I am externally expressing it and he's not really all that much. But he finds it so funny that I express myself so much. Like, to him, it's like, it's the same feeling that I get from cuddling a puppy, the fact that I'm so happy or that I find something so funny that I can't contain it within my body. He finds it adorable.
Yeah.
And I think there's that side of it too, that even the autistic people that don't express it externally, they then get that extra experience of absorbing other people's expression of happiness and of humor, and it warms them.
Yes.
And I think that to me is not lacking humor.
Yeah.
That is
what I would call good humored.
Yeah. And it's getting an extra nuance of happiness in life.
Yeah.
I do wonder, as Maya's just expressed, that we feel good because other people are feeling good, like that deep empathy in a way that I do wonder if neurotypical people feel that when they're watching a comedy show together.
I think they
whether
must.
They're also, well, I would hope so, but it was just like I'm just, I don't know what a neurotypical person feels like.
But there might be more performative emotions if it's multiple neurotypicals, because it's like, haha, I find that funny, and you're checking in with one another maybe a little bit more.
Rather than actually finding it funny.
No, they might also, but they might, like, I find things funny, but when I watch shows, I sort of suppress the external reaction, so I don't miss anything. So I'll smile maybe, and I might feel a little, but I'm not like guffawing the way I might on my own, or I might, just in a conversation with someone else. That said,
I'm the opposite.
Oh, really? My partner, he's generally he's a very serious person in a lot of contexts. So when we're watching something and he does find it funny and he does laugh out loud, it is like what you described, where I get so much joy out of it. Just like if I were to listen to a baby laughing, like I love when people are happy and laughing, and I do definitely get that dopamine boost.
Oxytocin.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
We're laughing at the I appreciate the correction, and I love the fact that we can just and
psychologist mode.
But I think that's the humor. You can't stop. You've corrected it because you wanted to make sure we've got the correct thing. It's
context.
Like, okay, cool. That's.
Because this
Thank
is
you.
also an educational show.
No, I forget about that sometimes.
We're supposed supposed to be autistic professionals, Kara.
But we're off hours, okay?
Right. Okay, fine.
What's off hours mean?
Just sort of, it's like after work, so it's more casual. We're not.
I was being ironic.
Oh, okay. I didn't pick up on that.
This is this is one of the things we talked about, difficulty of introduction. My job title is autistic advocate. Now, that's the most amazing job title, I think, any autistic person. I'm the only autistic advocate in the country.
Yes.
And then I get told, you stop work at 3:00 my time and you're going to stop work. And it's like, are you kidding? Like, no, this work does not stop.
No.
I don't have this concept of being on the clock or being off the clock.
Yeah.
And it's the same as.
I don't think I do either, because I think there are aspects of our jobs, all of us, that they don't switch off ever. Once you have the knowledge of, how teaching works, mm-hmm. or how the nervous system works, even at a basic level, the way that I do. I'm not a neurologist, but I think there's aspects of it that don't switch off ever. In every conversation.
I somewhat disagree.
Yeah? Okay.
But I think that's more because so I have my professional Kara mode that is very professional and guarded, and I'm very careful before I say anything, and I'm very careful in how I say things. Uh-huh. And then I have my off hours myself, and my ADHD impulsivity. I might ask a question and not consider the implications. I might word something. I might make a joke that is,
Oh, definitely.
So I'm much less guarded. And again, I don't always have that awareness, right? Or I forget that I still represent the professional part. I forget, especially when I'm talking with you two, because I forget that we're recording and,
Whoops.
Oopsie daisy, why did I say that?
I would say that for me, yes, I do have a more relaxed mode. I don't weigh every word the way that I do when I'm teaching or when I'm
giving a presentation in clinical practice
with someone. But if we're talking about something where the knowledge that relates to my profession is involved, that knowledge is there and I cannot switch it off. I can't.
Why should you?
That's. Yeah. But that also means, I think, that, when someone's making a joke about something to do with psychology, not that happens very often, but it happens. But if they're making the wrong joke, it's not funny. It's not funny because I know. But if they're making the joke and it professionally makes sense, if that knowledge is there in the joke, I'm there.
Yeah.
Oh. Meredith hates it when I maybe show appreciation to a joke and then say, of course, that's untrue, or that's not going to happen. Sometimes about physics, sometimes about, yes. Yeah. I need to be aware of the time. And I'd like to raise something that Maja talked about pre-recording, which I think ties into our discussion about the emojis. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things, and this was something I was feeling before Maja raised it. When I'm in these conversations, when I'm in these chats, when I'm on Discord, I feel like I don't belong and everybody else belongs there because I'm not catching, I'm not understanding. Yes. And then it gets me because I grew up at exactly the oldest age that should be, that, I have a good grasp of technology, and I have a really good grasp of technology. Mm-hmm. When I then get these conversations, I feel so excluded and like an imposter.
Yeah, so the trying to belong and not finding that sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I think that is a very common experience, not just in humor, not just in online communities, but in general for autistic people. I I think many of us have that feeling of being alone in a community
Mm-hmm.
very often, and we feel it very viscerally.
Yes.
And for that reason, I think when we do find people with whom we connect, like you guys, it sparks something. It sparks something where this is now so important that, you know, I'm willing to be here even though I'm supposed to be having dinner with my daughter. Not every day, not every day.
Yeah, we record like twice a month. So.
Yeah, but no, it's like this is important because when we find our tribe, when we find those small communities where we do feel that sense of belonging, where we don't feel excluded, it heals that wound of having felt like we don't belong our entire lives.
And that's also why I have no filter with the two of you, because I'm so comfortable with you both. And it's so nice to be around people where I can drop my hypervigilance, my activation, my chronic activation. And that's the beautiful part of community.
It is, because, you know, so with what you just said, it made me think of like dropping the fear of making mistakes because we know we can talk it out.
I know Maja will correct me if I say dopamine when I mean oxytocin.
No, but like, I mean actual social mistakes. Like, okay, I missed a recording not too long ago because I misunderstood what time we were recording. And in many other contexts, that would have haunted me. I would have not been able to sleep. I would have felt mortified. With you guys, I'm sorry. I'm definitely sorry.
No
but
worries.
I know that I can apologize and let you guys know that, you know, I haven't slept for 2 days. I'm sorry. Time zones went wonky. And you guys will acknowledge it and understand and forgive. And I don't have to be perfect. And that's a huge part of communication these days. I feel, especially online, is that the fear of making a social mistakes and the backlash that will come with that is so visceral.
It is.
It's so intense. Like,
yes.
I'm scared to post on social media.
Right?
And I'm scared of saying the wrong thing in the wrong crowd because someone is going to think something of me that is not true. And so these small communities where we are able to explain ourselves and be understood are so important to us.
It's interesting for me. I think I've lived my life being an outsider, but still having some insider, being parts of groups. I don't worry particularly about making a mistake on social media.
Yeah.
I'm really quite like my life is open. I've actually been called in at work for saying some things that maybe, you know, representing Autism Canada. And I take that, but then think I'm not going to change. I'm maybe a little bit more aware when I'm talking about something officially about autism, but like I'll just share music thoughts, I'll share political thoughts, I'll share this. And if I've made a mistake so many times in my life, I don't care.
I would like to get there, Bruce.
But that's social media. That's internet. We had. Well, let me try and I'm trying to be careful with the words. We had a horrific social event here a couple of days ago. Horrific. It was terrible. I sat there not understanding a thing that had gone on or that was going on, other than the person I care about most in the world was so upset because of something somebody else had done. And that hurt so much. And as we're having the conversation, I'm thinking, what could I have done better? Did I make a mistake? Like, there was not imposter, but I was so hypercritical of myself because it was happening in real life.
Yeah.
On the internet, if I make a mistake like that, or someone else makes a mistake, I just let it go.
Because I don't feel like most people let things go, right? And I would hope that when I make mistakes in things that I say, things that I communicate, or I leave information out, I really hope people will treat me with the grace that I would give to other people. But, there's that anonymity factor.
I just don't think I believe it, because I don't know. I think I was on Twitter a little bit too much. And then, of course, it became what it is now. And I've been off of there for a while.
I don't post so much, but I still scroll.
Now I'm on Threads, and it started out good, but now it's getting crowded again.
People ruin everything.
People ruin everything. Oh my God.
I'm not someone who goes to psychics, things like that. But one time I was with a friend who went to a psychic, and I was told that I will someday write something that will be very controversial. And so I've always had dread around my books coming out.
No. Your entire writing life should be that someone finds it controversial. I think that's really important.
Well, the thing is, I know there are things from my first book, I stand by about 95% of it. There are things that I would change, but that also just comes with growth and more information and age and late diagnosis that came after I wrote the book.
But also times changing.
But will people give me that grace?
Can I wrap this around just for a second?
Yes.
Because Maya just has to go. Dr. Tony Attwood. So his book, the book on Asperger's, is a good book.
The complete guide to
the complete guide. It's one of the best 15-year-old books about Asperger's autism. It's great. But because he wasn't autistic, everything was a grain of salt for me. Now, maybe he's discovered his writings have changed. And I was looking up a reference about, I can't remember what I was looking up. It was for a presentation. And something in the book was just wrong. Just wrong. Went to his website and he had changed his thought. Now, my admiration for him, it was pretty good, is through the roof now because, one, I think he is a researcher that is always growing.
He's been in the field for 50 years. He has to. Yeah.
But you read things that people are just reiterating the same things over and over again. Yes. I see a growth with him, but because I also see the fact that he is, I wish I could tell you the reference, but it was it's almost a flip, just a completely different way of looking at an autistic behavior. It's I admire you so much because you are he's not admitting a mistake because he can't do that academically.
He's willing to grow and change his mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Information. Yeah.
But there will always be people who don't grow and change their mind about him, which is unfortunate.
Well, I think that's to make it a little bit more general. That's not a thing about Tony Attwood. That's a thing about honestly, how social discourse works now on the internet is that people will find a quote that is maybe 30 years old, and they will post that, and that is now the truth of what that person said and believes present time, when in fact that may not be true.
Or it's devoid of context.
Yeah. And if you are one of those people whose name gets dragged through the mud because of something you said in a different time, when the basis for knowledge was different, when context was different, you now are trying to play whack-a-mole with saying, yeah, that was 30 years ago and this is now. People change, people grow, people are, growing, and people change their minds over time if they're smart.
Kara and I, because I've known Kara a little longer than you, Maja, I've seen changes in your thought process. I have seen there are certain shirts I used to wear that used to use puns on Asperger's, and now I just don't wear them. I see the problem with the word. I see how it's being used, and I'm letting it go personally for me. We are showing a growth. We are showing. And I was also going to say, when you guys get to be my age, maybe you won't care so much about the rest of the world because we're all old and donnery.
I really hope so.
I look forward to it. Okay, I do have to go now.
So let's wrap this up.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation. This was fun. Lots of tangents, and lots of things that I feel like we didn't fully explore, but maybe someday when we meet at the Autism Europe Congress next year and we have 3 full days to hang out.
Should we do a live episode?
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh my God, that would be so cool.
In one of our hotel rooms?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do it.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I love you both so much. And thank you everyone for watching. I deeply appreciate you as well.
Yes. Even though we don't know you.
Which is why I didn't say I love you. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. And we do look forward to hearing your thoughts on our conversation today. Please do put in comments if you have any thoughts or suggestions for what you'd like to hear us talk about. We are always interested in new ideas and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And don't eat cats.
No cat eating. I have 3. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.